We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 3 times a week across the nation on knookmedia.com. So, what do you think of Roger Ruffman?
Oh, Roger Ruffman and I agree on some things and disagree on a lot more. I'm not sure about marijuana.
Well, I like our next guest. I'm surprised we haven't had him on the show before. He wrote a great new book, The Collected Writings of David Horowitz, The Black Book of the American Left, Volume 3, The Great Betrayal. A man who's been called the worst enemy of the left and a treasure for conservatives, David Horowitz. David, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thank you.
So, you've written a series of books. This one is, I guess they're all your collected writings, and this is the 3rd volume of it?
Yeah, it's called The Great Betrayal, and it's really about how the Democrats have sabotaged the war on terror from the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993 through the death of Osama bin Laden.
Okay, so that's why it's called The Great Betrayal, because of the betrayal on the left?
Yeah, it's the great error by a major political party in our history, excepting, of course, the Civil War. Well, the Democrats supported the war in Iraq. They voted for it in the Senate. Their leadership endorsed it. And then 3 months into the war, they turned against it. It started, it wasn't only that they turned against it. And this is when our young men and women are fighting terrorists in Iraq and in harm's way. Not only did they turn against it, but they did things. They called Bush. They said he lied and caused people to die, lied about weapons of mass destruction and things like that. And they said the war was, this is Al Gore's words, immoral, illegal, and unnecessary. In other words, we were war criminals. Never has a political party done that. And the reason that they did this had nothing to do with the Iraq war. It had to do with the fact that there was a Democratic presidential primary as we went into Iraq. And an anti-war radical named Howard Dean was running away with that nomination because, of course, in the primaries, the left is very powerful.
Yes.
So Dean was getting 45%. Kerry was getting around 15%. So Kerry just mentally tore up the speech he gave as to why we should go into Iraq, and started the attacks on Bush. And these were the kind of attacks that an enemy makes, not an American party. It wasn't a criticism of a particular policy. It was that that Bush had snookered them into supporting the war. This was the biggest lie of the war because the Democrats sit on the Intelligence Committee. And Kerry actually was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. So they had all the information that Bush did. And if they had any doubts about it, all they had to do was pick up the phone to George Tenet, who was the head of the CIA and a Clinton appointee. He's a Democrat. They didn't do that because the fact is that Bush was correct. There were weapons of mass destruction. ISIS keeps discovering that. Just in the last month, they discovered 2,200 rockets filled with deadly sarin gas, a biological agent that Saddam Hussein had built. The Democrats lied about all this because they couldn't tell the truth. It was so discrediting to them that for political gain, they betrayed their country and the young men and women on the battlefield in Iraq. The reason they got away with this is because the Republicans were silent. The Bush and Rove had the idea, which Republicans always do, of rising above it all and ignoring the attacks.
Yeah, which is.
And so these attacks went on for 5 years, and they crippled Bush. He should have gone into Syria, where some of the chemical weapons went. That's how Assad got them. And we knew at the time that Saddam's generals and those chemical weapons had gone into Syria, and he should have punished Iran which produced all the IEDs that created almost all American casualties. When you see those wounded warriors on television, they've been blown up by IEDs. So we did nothing against Iran, and we couldn't because Bush was fighting a two-front war, and the one behind the lines, Betrayal in America, paralyzed him.
Yeah. We're having a conversation with David Horowitz, the author of a great new book, The Black Book of the American Left.
You know, David, when you talk about lies, nobody can hold a candle to our current administration.
Oh, yeah, we have a pathological liar in the White House.
In
no
everything.
question.
Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is, I like the book, and I've seen you on TV, heard you on the radio, and read some of your other writings. But the problem we have is the uninformed voters don't watch the news. They're more interested in what they can get from the government, and they'll never read your book. And this is what...
Well, that's true, but, my book is really aimed at conservatives and Republicans. They've been silent about this. This is the third book I've written on the Iraq War. But the Republicans haven't talked about the betrayal. Al Gore said of Bush, he betrayed us, but no Republican has said the Democrats betrayed their country, which they did. And so I'm happy if my book is read by conservatives and if they start using a much more aggressive language than they've been willing to use.
The Republicans never step up. They sit there and get stepped on constantly. And this
But you don't look. I mean, let's face it. If you look at the pundits, the conservative pundits that you'll see on Fox and other places, they're not using language like this, betrayal. They don't accuse the Democrats of treasonous acts. I mean, some of these are too much in the past, but look at the paralysis today. We're facing the greatest terrorist threat we've ever faced in ISIS. Vladimir Putin has swallowed the Crimea, invaded Ukraine, and is threatening Finland. And we are destroying our military through these budget cuts. It's being hollowed out so it can't fight wars. And, of course, Obama, because he's such a liar and doesn't back up his word, like he draws red lines in the sand and then does nothing, has made us an international laughingstock. Our enemies don't fear us. Our friends don't trust us. But where is the Republican bill calling for a massive rearmament in the face of these threats? There is none.
Right.
And Romney didn't bring anything up in the campaign, but he's alone. There is none because the fact that Republicans let the Democrats write the script on the Iraq War means that, America is the problem. And when America has arms and America intervenes, bad things happen. The bad things happen in Iraq because of the Democrats' sabotage of the war.
Yeah, no question
and there are
about it.
no Republicans saying this. So if my book, and no conservatives. So if my book would reach some conservatives, I would be very happy.
David, you touched on something that's kind of been a bone of contention with me, the weapons of mass destruction. I mean, there obviously were there. They shifted them to Syria. ISIS is finding them. Why isn't that talked about? I mean, it's one of those, if you tell the same lie long enough, people believe it. And the lie is...
if nobody is calling you a liar, why didn't some Republicans say, we want an apology to Bush and to the Bush administration for all those attacks, saying that he lied to get us into war. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There were. Where is it? I don't know. I listen to some talk radio and some, watch Fox every now and then. I don't see anybody saying that. I don't see a hue and cry when those weapons were discovered. The sarin gas, and before that, the chemical weapons. In fact, I watched a show with Megyn Kelly, whom she's terrific. But on the show, same show, she first had a segment, and she reported that ISIS had stumbled on the chemical weapons plant. And she treated it exactly the way the rest of the media treats it, that it might be dangerous in the hands of ISIS. Never once mentioning the lies of the Democrats during the Iraq War. Then the next segment was with Dick Cheney. And the first thing she says to him is, you were wrong about Iraq. Oh, no, he wasn't. He was right about Iraq.
Exactly.
It's the Democrats who are wrong. Mm-hmm. But if a Megyn Kelly, who's been terrific on all fronts, doesn't get it, you know we have a massive problem. And my book, The Great Betrayal, is my modest effort to correct that problem.
And it's a great book. When we come back from the break, David, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the news lately.
Sure.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.